Australian Code of Practice on Disinformation and Misinformation is a voluntary industry code designed to address the propagation of disinformation and misinformation on digital platforms in Australia. Disinformation is defined in the code as harmful, false, or misleading information that is propagated via inauthentic user behaviour. This includes the use of bots, coordinated campaigns, and other artificial means of amplification. Though it's not defined this way in the code, disinformation is often understood to involve an intent to harm or to disrupt civil society in some way for political or financial purposes. Misinformation, on the other hand, is harmful, false, or misleading information that is spread without such an intent to harm, generally by ordinary users who are engaging with their online social networks. The Code of Practice itself is open to digital platforms operating in Australia, including social media and search engines. Current signatories are Adobe, Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Redbubble, TikTok, and Twitter. The code originated in the ACCC's Digital Platforms Inquiry, which set out to examine the effects of digital platforms on news and journalism in Australia. Amongst other phenomena, the inquiry looked at the causes and effects of what is sometimes called information disorder, including disinformation and misinformation that's propagated online. In the inquiry's final report, released in June 2019, the ACCC made two recommendations that led to the development of the code. Recommendation 15 was a recommendation for digital platforms to develop a code to counter disinformation on their platforms. This was to be a mandatory code overseen by the ACMA or another independent regulator, with compliance and enforcement operating through a complaints-based system, similar to the broadcasting codes. Recommendation 14 was a recommendation for the ACMA to monitor digital platforms' voluntary efforts to help address difficulties that users have with assessing the quality of news and information online, and thus with identifying misinformation. The purpose was to gather an evidence base on the prevalence and harms of online information disorders in Australia. The government released its response to the Digital Platforms Inquiry in December 2019. The response combined elements of recommendations 14 and 15. Rather than a mandatory code, the government called for a voluntary code to cover both disinformation and credibility signalling. The ACMA was tasked with overseeing the development of the code. Digi, a lobby group representing many digital platforms in Australia, offered to develop the code. After a period of consultation, Digi released the code in February 2021. Because it's a voluntary code, it's open to digital platforms to sign up to the code or not. However, the code includes a number of mandatory commitments. First, it commits signatories to implementing measures to address the threat of disinformation and misinformation. But it gives them the flexibility to implement measures that suit how their platform operates and how disinformation and misinformation manifest on the platform. Signatories are also required to report annually on the measures that they've implemented and on the effectiveness of these measures as well. There are additional opt-in commitments that platforms can make. These include implementing measures to disrupt financial incentives for propagating disinformation, to improve system integrity, to help users identify misinformation, and to improve public understanding and to contribute to research. The code is a first step towards addressing online information disorders, but there are many areas where it could be improved. The code is now under review until the 18th of July. This review is an opportunity for all interested parties and related industries to contribute to the improvement of the code.